and increase the reds quite a bit. So for highlights and the midtones. Okay, so something like this. And maybe make the shadows a bit colder. Alright. I think that's nice. Let's add a photo filter layer. And I want to give it some slight sepia toning. So maybe like 20% or so. That's nice. And maybe the tone is a bit too strong on the windows. So this is where we can use our material masks. So I'm just going to copy it over to this image. And using the select color range, I'm going to pick my windows. And in this photo filter layer, I'm going to paint over my mask with some black color. Okay, so like that. And this way you can control which areas are affected by the photo filter and which are not. Right, so that's nice. Maybe let's boost the sand a little bit. Let's make it a bit more saturated. So select color range, pick the sand. And I'm gonna deselect this area over here, which is the pine trees. Alright, so hide that layer and let's create a new adjustment layer. And let's use curves. And now I can adjust the sand individually, like this. Okay, that's nice. Right, I want to give the scene a bit more contrast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new black and white adjustment layer. And just look through the profiles to find something interesting. Okay, so maybe the yellow filter will be fine in this case. So let's try some different blending modes. I think something like soft light usually works fine for stuff like this. Alright, let's reduce the opacity a bit. Okay, something was wrong with my mask here, so I just painted some black over there on the top. And okay, let's get back to our black and white layer. And let's try it at maybe 25% or so. Alright, let's add another adjustment layer, and this time it's going to be hue and saturation. Okay, and I'm going to bring the saturation up by about 10 or so. Okay, but now I want to make the trees in the background a bit less saturated. So we can use the Z-depth for that. And it's easy to use. I'm also going to use my mask for the Z-depth channel, so I'm going to copy my alpha, duplicate the Z-depth layer, create a mask for it, and paste it here in the mask channel. Right, now when you make the background completely black, you can invert your Z-depth and you can see that it's only affecting the 3D objects and not the background. Okay, let's adjust it with some curves so it has a bit more contrast, it's a bit brighter. Okay, so something like this might work. Let's copy merged and create a new hue saturation layer. Okay, and in the masks I'm gonna go ahead and paste my z-depth. Alright, so now the only thing that's gonna be affected by this hue saturation layer is gonna be the trees in the background. So if I bring down the saturation, you can see the effect on those trees. So let's make it a bit brighter and a bit less saturated. So sort of like that, just to give it some more depth. And I think it looks quite nice. Right, let's add some light vignetting. I'm just going to create a new layer and paint with black brush. Okay, maybe something like that, and blur it with a pretty large radius like this. And that's nice. Bring down the opacity to maybe 40% or so. Okay, so I think this image is almost ready. Let's just slightly sharpen it. And to do this non-destructively, you can select all, copy merged, paste, and run a high-pass filter. Okay, so set your sharpening radius, so maybe something like 0.6 might be fine. Press OK, and set the blending mode soft light or hard light for stronger effect. I'm gonna try hard light. Okay, let's zoom to 100%, and this is with the filter applied, and this is with the layer invisible, so you can see it works pretty well. And you can adjust the strength of the effect by using the opacity slider. Right, finally we have our ambient occlusion. Let's just normalize the levels for it. Okay, so I'll go to image, auto contrast, that's fine, and copy it over to this image file. Okay, let's paste and set it at multiply. Right, I'm gonna bring down the opacity to maybe like 18% or 16, somewhere around that value. And I'm gonna drag and drop. Actually, it looks like we don't have the alpha channel anywhere in this image, so you have to copy it from this file. Okay, create a mask, go to channels and paste right here. Right, and now it affects only the foreground or only the 3D objects and not the sky. Okay, let's make it a bit stronger and modify the mask a bit to exclude the trees a little bit. So that's nice. Okay, I think maybe the sky is a bit too dark, so let's duplicate this layer. Create a mask and paste our alpha. And now when I go to the layer just one below it, I can modify it with curves or other adjustment methods, and it only affects the sky. Alright, it's nice. Change the hue saturation a bit. And finally add one more adjustment layer, and that's going to be curves, and boost the whole thing a little bit brighter. Right. So that's our final image for the fall render. Alright, let's move on to the spring image. So right now it looks a bit bland. Let's duplicate the layer by pressing Ctrl+J. And let's bring up the curves a bit. Actually, I want to make the sky a bit more intense first, so I'm gonna use my alpha map, duplicate the layer one more time, create a mask, and paste it right here. And now this lower layer is going to be used only for the sky. Right, so let's try maybe some exposure settings a bit. Let's give it more contrast by lowering gamma and increasing the exposure. That's a bit better. Now let's use the curves modifier for the upper layer. And just boost those midtones and add some contrast a bit, like that. Right. Now let's add an adjustment layer, curves. This time it's gonna work on both the sky and the model. So that's pretty nice. Maybe the reflections in the windows are too strong. Let's use this color mask to fix that. So select color range windows. And in this curve adjustment layer, just paint in with black over your selection to mask those windows a bit. Okay, so now I'm gonna add another adjustment layer, color balance, and make the whole thing a bit warmer. Okay, mostly yellows and not so much reds. Right, this might be a bit too much, so I'm gonna lower the opacity a little bit. So let's try it at something like 70. And let's give the scene a bit more contrast with a black and white layer. Okay, I want to boost those greens. So let's try something like okay, the sky is looking good, and boost those greens as well. All right. That's fine. And try the soft light mode. Okay, I'm going to bring down the opacity, 25% or so. Okay, and maybe let's adjust the hue and saturation a bit as well. So bring that saturation down a little bit. Okay. Let's try some photo filters. Okay, I like this one, but maybe let's make it weaker. Alright, nice. And okay, maybe it's too much. Let's get rid of that. I'll create a new layer and add some vignetting. Okay, let's bring down the opacity. I think around 20% will be fine. Okay, and now let's try using the Z-depth for some adjustments in the background. I'm gonna do the same thing as I did for the fall image. I'm gonna mask out the sky and bring up the contrast. Alright, just copy merged or Ctrl+Shift+C and create a new hue saturation layer. Alright, and paste in the mask channel. And again, I'm going to slightly lighten it and reduce the saturation a little bit. And maybe shift the hue a bit towards yellows. Okay, that's nice. Let's add some sharpening. So copy merged, paste, high pass filter, and set to hard light. Okay, so this was the non-destructive part for this image. Now I'm going to copy merged. Paste and just adjust the whole thing as another layer. Okay, run some auto contrast and maybe brighten some areas with the dodge and burn tools. Okay, so let's dodge maybe the trees a bit. Okay, maybe these reflections, make them a bit brighter and more interesting. And I think the image looks pretty good now. Okay. Maybe a bit too much over here, so just undo that. Right, and maybe let's try boosting the flowers by going to our layer mask, material mask, and selecting the color range for flowers. And that's this green color over here. Alright, let's deselect the roof. And create a new adjustment layer, curves. It's okay. And just brighten that up a bit. And I think it's pretty good. Right, so that's our spring image. So next up is the summer. So I didn't have an interesting HDRI with some nice cumulus clouds like this here. So I'm going to use a background image. Okay. So to do that, let's duplicate the background 2 times. Select our alpha mask. Okay. Copy it and mask the upper channel. Right, good. So now let's copy the clouds and paste them over here, just below the upper channel. Right, let's make the image a bit smaller. I move the whole thing upwards. So like this. Alright, and now let's use the curves to make it brighter to match the render better. Alright, that's better. Let's bring down the saturation a bit. And maybe bring the hue towards the blue colors a bit. So that's fine. And maybe boost the midtones. Alright. So the sky is looking pretty nice. Let's adjust the foreground. Okay, I'm just going to use curves and boost that right up. And the thing with this render is that I have to modify my background photo a little bit. Get rid of these white edges around here. So maybe let's clone in some clouds. Or maybe let's try something from over here. So just using the clone stamp tool, increase the opacity and sample only the current layer. And let's just bring some clouds in here. Right, and I think that's a bit better. Maybe some more over here. And that's fine. All right. I think the clouds are a bit, and the sky is a bit too dark. So bring that up to match with the rest of the image a bit better. I think we are fine. So let's add an adjustment layer, curves, to adjust both the sky and the 3D scene together. So let's boost it up a bit, increase the contrast, and maybe let's mask this area of the roof. So let's copy that material mask, paste on top of the layer stack. And go to select color range and pick that green color from the roof. Okay, great. And in this curves layer, I'm gonna paint it in with some black. Just to tone it down a little bit. Actually, I'm starting to think that this curves layer is not really necessary for the scene, so just delete that. I think it becomes a bit too bright. Let's add some black and white, make some nice contrast. Okay, so I think this preset works fine. Let's try to overlay and bring down the opacity a bit. Okay, looking good. Let's add some color balance. Okay, where is it? And make it warmer, so it seems more like summer. Right, great. Okay, so what else? I think it's starting to look pretty good. I'll just copy merged everything, paste, and add some sharpening with the high pass filter. And maybe after that, let's add some vignetting. Alright, blur. And maybe blur one more time. With a slightly smaller radius. Alright, let's bring that down to maybe 25. Okay, 35, that's fine. Let's add another adjustment layer. Let's use curves. Just boost the middle a bit. It's fine. I think this vignetting is a bit too much on these clouds here, so I'm just going to delete it. And maybe opacity lowered a bit. That's a bit better. Okay, let's add some depth to the scene. Again, the same technique with masking and inverting. Okay, paste. And make the background darker. Right, copy merged. Back to the original image. And let's create a new adjustment layer. Hue saturation, paste that mask, and desaturate a bit, make a bit lighter. Right, let's make another adjustment layer. You can just control click on this mask to select it and create a new adjustment layer, photo filter. It's going to use that same mask it did for this previous layer. Alright, so let's make the background a bit colder maybe. Okay, I like this one. Okay, that's nice. Maybe make the mask a bit brighter. Okay, so that's good. And finally, I'm just going to copy copy merged, paste. And dodge some areas, maybe the trees, maybe something around the bushes. And I think it's quite nice. And let's stamp it at that. So that's our summer image. Let's finish this up with the winter scene. Okay, so here's the render. Let's duplicate the layer. Okay, and use the curves tool to bring some contrast to the image. Alright, so looks fine. Let's try some adjustment layers like color balance. Okay, and play around with it a bit. Maybe add some more reds. Okay, looks good. I want to make those trees a bit brighter. So I'm going to use my material ID mask, copy it, and paste in this image. And let's select this red color range. Okay. Right, that should do it. Now let's deselect the windows. And create a new curves adjustment layer. Okay, and let's bring that up to make that snow a bit whiter. And I also want to desaturate it a little bit, so let's select that layer mask by control clicking on it and creating a new hue saturation layer adjustment. Okay, and bring down that saturation. And that's fine. Let's add the black and white layer. See what we can get here. And let's try this one. Looks nice. So now I want to make this area a bit brighter and make those windows a bit brighter. So let's use this material ID mask to select the windows. Alright, let's deselect everything we don't need. And add a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, I want to make that a bit more saturated. Maybe add another layer using the same mask and make that curves. Let's brighten it up a bit. Now I'm starting to think these trees are a bit too bright. So let's reduce the amount of that curves layer. Okay, like that. And maybe make that background layer we have a bit darker and a bit more contrasty. Okay. So now I want to add some soft glow around those windows. So I'm going to create a new layer. Okay, select color range and pick some of those yellow colors. Copy merged, paste, and maybe duplicate the layer one time and blur it. Okay, that's too much. Let's try something like this for now. And blur this lower layer a bit less to make the glow a bit stronger around the edges, of the windows. Okay, and let's try setting that to overlay maybe. And reduce the opacity for that upper layer a bit. And I think that's a bit better. And let's use the Z-depth now. Okay, so again I'm gonna mask it. Like this. And brighten up that mask a bit. Okay, so let's copy it, copy merged, back to this image here, and create a new adjustment layer, hue saturation. Let's paste that mask and brighten up the background a bit. Okay, so I'm going to create another layer, this time using curves. Okay, that's nice. Now let's add some nice vignetting. So paint in with the black. Okay, I'm gonna blur one more time. Maybe slightly smaller radius. And bring down the opacity. Okay, and let's add another layer of anything, this time closer to the corners. And bring down the opacity for it as well. Right, so that's nice. Let's select the highlights from the background. Okay. And I'm gonna copy that and paste and blur it a bit. Okay. Just to make these edges around the tree a bit softer. That's nice. Maybe let's add an adjustment layer, color balance, and make this area a bit more yellow here around the house. And I'm gonna use the gradient tool with it set to radial. And it looks like we need to invert our mask, so click reverse. And it looks a bit nicer. Okay. So now let's copy merged, paste, and some auto contrast. Maybe that's a bit too much. Maybe let's bring back some of the detail with shadows, highlights. And I'm especially interested in the shadows in this case. Okay, let's do that. Yeah, I think it's better. Okay, let's copy, undo, and paste, and use a mask just to use those shadows enhancements only on the house. Okay, and it's quite easy to do. And there you have it. Right, so that's a bit better. And let's maybe dodge some areas. Okay, here in front of the windows. Okay, maybe too much over here. Okay, I don't want to overdo it. Maybe paint in some yellows on a new layer. And blur. Alright, that's gonna be fine. Okay, let's do that blur again. try maybe some blending modes. And I think hard light works fine here. Okay, so I think the image looks quite nice. And I think we're finished. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed these tutorials.